All right, here we go. Please, Annabeth, I prayed. Don't tell him to sit again. We made it through. Cerebus wasn't any less scary for looking from the back. Annabeth said, "Good dog." She held up the tattered red ball and probably came to the same conclusion I did. If she rewarded Cerebus, there'd be nothing left for another trick. She threw the ball anyway. The monster's left mouth immediately snatched it up, only to be attacked by the middle head, while the right head moaned in protest. While the monster was distracted, Annabeth walked briskly under its belly and joined us at the metal detector. "How did you do that?" I asked her, amazed. "Obedience school," she said breathlessly. I was surprised to see there were tears in her eyes. When I was little at my dad's house, we had a Doberman. "Never mind that," Grover said, tugging at my shirt. "Come on!" We were about to bolt through the easy death line when Cerebus moaned pitifully from all three mouths. Annabeth stopped. She turned to face the dog, which had done a 180 to look at us. Cerebus panted expectantly, the tiny red ball in pieces in a puddle of drool at its feet. "Good boy," Annabeth said, but her voice sounded melancholy and uncertain. The monster's head turned sideways as if it worried about her. "I'll bring you another ball soon," Annabeth promised faintly. "Would you like that?" The monster whimpered. I didn't need to speak dog to know Cerebus was still waiting for the ball. "Good dog. I'll come visit you soon, I promise." Annabeth turned to us. "Let's go." Grover and I pushed through the metal detector, which immediately screamed and set off flashing red lights. "Unauthorized possessions! Magic detected!" Cerebus started to bark. We burst through the easy death gate, which started even more alarms blaring, and raced into the underworld. A few minutes later we were hiding, out of breath, in the rotten tree trunk, a immense black tree, as security ghouls scuttled past, yelling for backup from the Furies. Grover mumbled, "Well, Percy, what have we learned today?" "That three-headed dogs prefer red rubber balls over sticks?" "No," Grover told me. "We learned that your plans really, really bite." I wasn't sure about that. I thought maybe Annabeth and I both had the right idea. Even here in the underworld, everybody, even monsters, needed a little attention every once in a while. I thought about that as we waited for the ghouls to pass. I pretended not to see Annabeth wipe a tear from her cheek as she listened to the mournful keening of Cerebus in the distance, longing for his new friend. Chapter 19. We find out the truth, sort of. Imagine the largest concert crowd you've ever seen. A football field packed with 1,000,000 faces. Now imagine a field 1,000,000 times that big, packed with people, and imagine the electricity's gone out, and that there's no noise, no light, no beach ball bouncing around over the crowd. Something tragic has happened backstage. Whispering masses of people are just milling around the shadows, waiting for a concert that will never start. If you can picture that, you have a pretty good idea what the field of Fossadel looked like. The black grass had been trampled by eons of dead feet. A warm, moist wind blew like a breath of swamp. Black trees. Grover told me they were poplars, grew in clumps here and there. The cavern ceiling was so high above us, it might have been a bank of storm clouds, except for the stalactites, which glowed faint gray and looked wickedly pointed. I tried not to imagine if they'd fall on us any moment, but dotted around the fields were several that had fallen and impaled themselves in the black grass. I guess the dead didn't have to worry about the little hazards, like being speared by stalactites the size of booster rockets. Annabeth, Grover, and I tried to blend into the crowd, keeping an eye out for a security ghost. I couldn't help looking for familiar faces among the spirits of Affadel, but the dead are hard to look at. Their faces shimmer. They all look slightly angry or confused. They'll come up to you and speak, but their voices sound like chatter, like bats twittering. Once they realize you can't understand them, they frown and move away. The dead aren't scary, they say, or they're just sad. We crept along, following the line of new arrivals that snaked around the main gates towards the back-tented pavilion with the banner that read, "Judgment from Asylum and Eternal Damnation. Welcome, newly deceased." Out the back of the tent came two much smaller lines. To the left, spirits flanked by security ghouls were marched down a rocky path towards the fields of punishment, which glowed and smoked in the distance. A vast cracked wasteland with rivers of lava and minefields and miles of barbed wire separating the different torture areas. Even from far away, I could see people being chased by hellhounds, burned at the stake, forced to run naked through cactus patches or listen to opera music. I could just make out a tiny hill with the ant-sized figure of Sisyphus struggling to move his boulder to the top. And I saw worse tortures. 2 things I don't want to describe. The line coming from the right side of Judgment Pavilion was much better. This one led down toward a small valley surrounded by walls, a gated community, which seemed to be the only happy part of the underworld. Beyond the security gate was neighborhoods of beautiful homes from every time period in history. Roman pavilions and medieval castles and Victorian mansions. Silver and gold flowers blooming on lawns. Grass rippled with rainbow colors. I could hear laughter and smell barbecue cooking. Elysium. In the middle of that valley was glittering blue lake, with 3 small islands like a vacation resort in the Bahamas. The Isle of the Blessed, for people who had chosen to be reborn 3 times, and 3 times achieved Elysium. I immediately knew that's where I wanted to go when I died. That's what it's all about, Annabeth said, like she was reading my thoughts. That's the place for heroes. But I thought of the few people that are on Elysium, how tiny it was compared to the field of Fesodel and even the fields of punishment. So few people did good in their lives, it was depressing. We left the Judgment Pavilion and moved deeper into the Esophyll fields, and it got darker. The colors faded from our clothes. The crowds of chattering spirits began to thin. After a few miles of walking, we began to hear familiar screech in the distance. Looming on the horizon was a palace of glittering black obsidian. Above that, parapets swirled 3 dark bat-like creatures, the Furies. I got the feeling they were waiting for us. I suppose it's too late to turn back, Grover said wistfully. We'll be okay. I tried to sound confident. Maybe we should search some of the other places first, Grover suggested, like Elysium, for instance. Come on, goat boy. Annabeth grabbed his arm. Grover yelped. His sneakers sprouted wings and his legs shot forward, pulling him away from Annabeth, and he landed flat on his back in the grass. Grover, Annabeth chided, stop messing around. But I didn't. He yelped again. His shoes were flapping like crazy now. They levitated off the ground and started dragging him away from us. Maya, he called, but the magic words seemed to have no effect. Maya, already. 911, help! I got over being stunned and made a grab for Grover's hand, but it was too late. He was picking up speed and speeding down the hill like a bobsled. We ran after him. Annabeth shouted, Untie the shoes! It was a smart idea, but I guess it's not so easy when your shoes are pulling your feet first at full speed. Grover tried to sit up, but couldn't get close to the laces. We kept after him, trying to keep him in sight as he ripped between the legs of spirits who chattered into him in annoyance. I was sure Grover was going to barrel straight through the gates of Hades, but his shoes veered sharply to the right and dragged him in the opposite direction. The slope got steeper. Grover picked up speed. Annabeth and I had to keep the spirit up. The cavern walls narrowed on either side, and I realized we had entered some kind of tunnel. No black grass or trees now, just rock underfoot and the dim light of the static leaves above. Grover, I yelled, my voice echoing. Hold on to something. What? He yelled back. He was grabbing at gravel, but there was nothing big enough to slow him down. The tunnel got darker and colder. The hairs on my arm bristled. It smelled evil down here. It made me think of things I shouldn't even know about. Blood spilled on an ancient stone altar, the foul breath of murder. Then I saw what was ahead of us, and I stopped dead in my tracks. The tunnel widened into a huge, dark cavern. In the middle was a chasm the size of a city block. Grover was sliding straight towards the edge. Come on, Percy! Annabeth yelled, tugging at my wrist. But that's... I know, she shouted. The place you described in your dream. But Grover's going to fall if we don't catch him. She was right, of course. Grover's predicament got me moving again. He was yelling and clawing at the ground, but the winged shoes kept dragging him towards the pit, and it didn't look like we could possibly get to him in time. What saved him were his hooves. The flying sneakers had always been loose on him, and finally Grover hit a big rock and the left shoe came flying off. It sped in the darkness down to the chasm. The right shoe kept tugging along, but not as fast. Grover was able to slow himself down by grabbing on a big rock and using it as an anchor. He was just 10 feet from the edge of the pit when we caught him and hauled him back to the slope. The other winged shoe tugged itself off, circled around us angrily, and kicked our head in protest before flying off into the chasm to join its twin. We all collapsed, exhausted, on the obsidian gravel. My limbs felt like lead. Even my backpack seemed heavier, as if someone had filled it with rocks. Grover was scratched up pretty bad. His hands were bleeding. His eyes had gone to slit-pupiled goat style, the way it did when they were always terrified. I don't know how, he panted. I didn't— Wait, I said. Listen. I heard something, a deep whisper in the darkness. Another few seconds, Annabeth said, Percy, this place. Shh, I said. I stood. The sound was getting louder. A muttering, evil voice from far, far below us, coming from the pit. Grover sat up. What's that noise? Annabeth heard it too, and I could see it in her eyes. Tartarus. The entrance to Tartarus. I uncapped Analacamus. The bronze sword expanded, gleaming in the darkness, and the evil voice seemed to falter just for a moment before resuming its chant. I could almost make the words out now. Ancient words, older than the Greek. As if— Magic, I said. We've got to get out of here, Annabeth said. Together, we dragged Grover to his hooves and started back up the tunnel. My legs wouldn't move fast enough. My backpack weighed me down. The voice got louder and angry behind us, and we broke into a run, not a moment too soon. A cold blast of wind pulled us on our backs, as if the entire pit were inhaling. For a terrifying moment I lost my ground, my feet slipping in the gravel. If we'd been any closer to the edge, we would have been sucked in. We kept struggling forward, and finally reached the top of the tunnel, where the cavern widened into the fields of asphodel. The wind died. A wail of outrage echoed from deep inside that tunnel. Something was not happy we'd gotten away. What was that? Grover panted. When we collapsed into relative safety of the black poplar grove. One of Hades' pets? Annabeth and I looked at each other. I could tell she was nursing an idea, probably the same one I'd gotten during the taxi ride to L.A., but she was too scared to share it. That was enough to terrify me. I capped my sword and put the pen back in my pocket. Let's keep going. I looked at Grover. Can you walk? He swallowed. Yeah, sure. I never liked those shoes anyway. He tried to sound brave about it, but he was trembling as badly as Annabeth and I were. Whatever was in that pit was nobody's pet. It was unspeakably old and powerful. Even Echidna had never given me that feeling. I was almost relieved to turn my back on the tunnel and head towards the palace of Hades. Almost. The Furies circled the parapets. High in the gloom, the outer walls of the fortress glittered back, and the 2-story tall bronze gates stood wide open. Up close, I saw the engravings on the gates were scenes of death. Some were of modern times, an atomic bomb exploding over a city, a trench filled with gas mask-wearing soldiers, a line of African famine victims waiting with empty bowls out, but all of them looked as if they'd been etched into bronze statues thousands of years ago. I wondered if I was really looking at prophecies that come true. Inside the courtyard was the strangest garden I'd ever seen. Multicolored mushrooms, poisonous shrubs, and weird luminous plants grew without sunlight. Precious jewels made up for the lack of flowers, piles of rubies as big as my fist, clumps of raw diamonds. Standing here and there like frozen party guests were Medusa's garden statues, petrified children, satyrs, centaurs, all smiling grotesquely. In the center of the garden was an orchard of pomegranate trees, their orange blooms neon bright in the dark. The garden of Persephone, Annabeth said. Keep walking. I understood why she wanted to move on. The tart smell of those pomegranates were almost overwhelming. I had a sudden desire to eat them, but then I remembered the story of Persephone. One bite of the underworld food, and I would never be able to leave. I pulled Grover away to keep him from picking a juicy one.